Welcome to The Human Side of Money, a show dedicated to equipping financial advisors with the skill set required to work with emotional human beings on the emotionally charged topic of money. You'll get practical tips and insights on applying behavioral finance into your practice from conversations with fellow advisors, industry consultants, and experts in the fields of behavior, psychology, communication, and more. Each episode is designed to help you enhance client outcomes and forever change the trajectory of your advisory business. Now here's your host, Brendan Frazier.
Libby Greiwe, welcome back to the show.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. In fact, the last time you were on, almost 2 years ago, by the way, last time you were on, we talked about a lot of different things. And in fact, it's one of those conversations I refer back to or think back to quite a bit just in my day-to-day conversations and work with advisors. I think about it a lot. We covered a lot of really good stuff. There was one topic in particular that in my research, I saw it and I thought to myself, that's going to be way too much of a conversation to try to pack it into this first one. It's going to be something we need to come back and talk about later. And because I sat there and I thought about it and I went, you know what, this is really good. We need to have this conversation. Didn't know how to do it in that conversation. So here we are. We're going to talk about it today. And so I'm going to ask you this question just to kind of like tee it off.
Okay.
In other words, sort of set the foundation, set the stage, because everybody is now wondering like, what's the topic?
Me too.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't be wondering what the topic is. You wrote a book, or you're writing a book, about to release a book on the topic of onboarding. And so my question is, why did you want to write a book on the question of on the topic of onboarding?
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, I cannot believe it's been 2 years since we recorded that episode. That's wild. Time has just completely flown. Okay, so why onboarding? Onboarding is literally the lamest process that you could possibly think of when you think of topics to write a book on. And that's why I did it, right? So over the last 20 plus years of being in this industry, I've really kind of realized that there's 8 core processes that most financial planners have in their business, right?
You wrote an article on this.
Yes.
Right. All right.
Oh yeah.
We'll link to it.
Yeah, I've gabbed about this for like ever. So yeah, there's kind of 8 core processes that every practice has. And often like when I'm out speaking or, talking to groups about these 8 processes, I want to talk to them about how there's these different layers, right? And if we think about a process just through the lens of paperwork, SOPs, setting up your CRM, kind of like the super mundane, boring stuff, we're completely missing this humongous opportunity to use processes to deepen the client relationship. So I love talking about onboarding. Number one, because of the 8 processes, it's literally like the lamest, most paperworky, kind of boring, understated process that there is. And I love showing people how by layering in client psychology, layering in these human-to-human experiences, how you can make what is at face value kind of the most boring, dumbest, lamest process there is, and turn it into this referral generating, relationship building, like depth experience for your clients.
So what you said is really interesting, because I think on one hand, no matter what the process is, we tend to think of like there is the process and there is paperwork, and that will be what it is, and it just is what it is. But I think I hear you saying is there is the process and there is paperwork, but that doesn't have to be separate from the opportunity to layer in or add human connection, right? In other words, I think of it as like, we tend to think like, oh, I have process and paperwork that has to be done, must be done, and I will execute. And then I'll probably get my human connection, the more like relationship side, I'll get that through other ways and other avenues. If I'm hearing you right, you're saying we can actually, if you do it well, if you know how to do it, you can do both of those. You can take the paperwork part and create more opportunity for relationship.
Absolutely. Like they're not two mutually exclusive things, right? If we take, and for me, whenever people are asking, well, how did you build a referral only practice? And how were you working part-time and doing 7 figures of production as a solo advisor? And how are you doing all of these things? when I boil it down to kind of the three core things we were doing, one of them was building systems and processes that were deeply rooted in client experience. Like that was the number one way that we drove referrals. I am not a big believer in asking for them. I always felt super awkward doing it. I didn't want to potentially harm any of the relationship capital that I had built with our clients. And it just felt kind of icky to me, but I knew I wanted more referrals. And we found that the more intentional we were about using our processes and building our processes to move our clients through their journey and seeing things through both lenses, the deeper the relationships, the more starkly different their client experience was with us than with any advisor they had experienced before. And by kind of giving them that, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but that sort of that Ritz-Carlton concierge level experience, especially in the beginning of the relationship when it felt so different and so unique, that was really what started driving referrals. And the craziest part is when we implemented this first 100 days experience, we started getting referrals from clients within that window. And I grew up in the broker dealer world, right? Where you had to deliver for free forever and then like put all of the time and effort and build that capital and deliver value to finally be able to be in a position to feel worthy of receiving a referral. So when we started getting just people dumping their friends and family on us within the first month or two, we were like, okay, wait, something is really different here. And what we realized is that it's this third layer of a process. It's this using process to build connection and deepen the relationship that just felt so different for clients, and thinking through the lens of client psychology, as opposed to just through the lens of how do we do this better, smarter, faster, cheaper, or easier from a business perspective.
Okay, so you just alluded to it, the first 100 days. The title of the book is The First 100 Days, The Advisor's Blueprint for a Remarkable Client Experience.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Book, and of course, it's coming with it. And so we'll get some information out there on the links to access all that. I kind of want to spend a minute diving into this first 100 days idea or concept, right? Like, what's the magic in the first 100 days? What do we need to know about the first 100 days?
Yeah. So the first 100 days, there is a very specific psychological process that a consumer goes through. So there is a book by Joey Coleman called Never Lose a Customer Again. And the Coleman Company did a huge research study. So worldwide, first world countries, second world countries, products, services. They covered the gamut from doctor's visits to cat food to literally everything in between. And what they found was, regardless of where in the world it was, regardless of, the economy and the GDP of the country that they were looking at, regardless of Eastern versus Western civilization and culture, that everybody had this chemical reaction in that first experience after making a buying decision. So we know it more colloquially as buyer's remorse. But when a consumer makes a big decision, they're flooded with cortisol and they have all of these immediate reactions of, oh my goodness, did I make the right call? Like, even if they're excited to work with you. So I use this example a lot. So imagine, Brendan, when you were an advisor, you closed a $2 million client. You went through this whole planning process with them. You did your discovery. You gathered all of their data. You had all these really deep, meaningful conversations about their goals and their dreams. You analyzed their data using different software programs, and you delivered these beautiful recommendations. And they were like, yes, we want to work with Brendan. And so you have a couple of options here, right? So you close a $2 million case and you're like, this is great. These were great clients. Like, my work here is done. Pat myself on the back. You know what? I think I'm going to take the rest of the day off. Team, go ahead and get the paperwork going. So you go hit the golf course, or for me, I might hit the tub with the latest Bridgerton novel or whatever. And we're doing our self-care and rewarding ourselves. And we're excited because the client's excited. And if we're off on the golf course or in the tub, doing our thing, we're neglecting the fact that our clients are having a completely different experience on the other side of the table. They left the office and they're like, I'm so excited to work with you. And then they get home and they're like, did I do enough research? Did I make the right call? How much paperwork is this really going to be? Oh my gosh, what is this going to look like at tax season? Is the CPA going to charge me more because I'm going to have all these forms? How do I keep that organized? Oh Lord, I need to set up another portal. How many characters and special letters? And, is that going to require? And I have to keep that and figure that out. And I have to make sure the right banking's on file. And they're going through this whole journey, right? They have to break up with Dave, the previous advisor, and that's going to be hard. And they don't know what to say to him. And they're going through this whole thing. So if you're out on the golf course trying to have trying to hit your first hole in one, and we're not building a process that helps move clients through this experience, we're completely missing the opportunity. So I love to think of this sort of, the example that I love using is a taxi versus Uber, right? So back in the day, I can remember being in New York City, standing on the street corner, trying to hail a cab. And I was probably in my late 20s. I had no idea what I was doing. So I'm standing on the street corner, like waving my arms, it's pouring rain, and I have no idea why the ones with the lights on, which I thought meant they were empty, are zooming by me. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong, right? I look like a tourist. Maybe I'm supposed to do it with one hand. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm standing in the wrong spot and they can't pull over here. So I went and stood somewhere else. Finally I think someone helped me, got into a taxi. And of course, I'm trying to explain to the driver where I'm trying to go. I'm trying to hold my, my Nokia phone up to the glass, here's where I'm trying to go. And it was like a whole thing. And the drivers, and I knew it was a straight shot, and we're making all these turns, and I'm going, what in the world? And I'm watching the meter calculate. And I'm like, are we taking a crazy route because he's trying to charge me more? And then we got to the destination. And of course he was like, let's say the meter said it was $27. He's like, that'll be $40 and I only take cash. And I'm like, well, that's weird because your sign says you take Visa, MasterCard, and an American Express. And he's like, nope, cash, $40. It was a whole thing. I remember getting out and being like, well, that I was, looked like a drowned rat. It was more expensive than I thought and super stressed. Well, now you think about Uber, right? I can stand in the nice dry lobby of my hotel. I know exactly what car is showing up and when and where exactly they're going to pick me up. I get in the car, match the license plate. The driver already knows where I'm supposed to go. When I get there, the transaction's already complete. I just slide out of the car and I can provide immediate feedback to the next user about what that experience was like. Now, the kicker is it didn't get me there any faster, and it didn't necessarily get me there any cheaper. It was literally the same distance door to door.
Unless they took the crazy
Uber?
route. If
unless
taxi took the crazy route, then you did get there
But it
faster.
is more expensive and it does cost more. And there's something especially, and I don't know, maybe it's especially as a female, but there's safety protocols and all of this stuff. But why? So whenever I'm speaking at a conference, I'll ask people okay, of all the people in the room, how many of you literally took a taxi, like a yellow taxi from the airport to the conference location? And there's always 2 hands. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'll cut you some slack because there's literally a taxi line at the airport. It's really easy.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, how many of you took an Uber or a Lyft? And almost every single hand in the room goes up and everyone chuckles. And I'm like, right, that's exactly it. And why? Why would you do that? Because the consumer experience was so much better. Uber thought through the lens of how do we just reduce friction? How do we look for all of these points in the process that are tough or complicated or can make people feel kind of icky? And how do we remove those friction points and make this a frictionless experience for people? And we want to do that same thing with our 8 processes, right? We want to look through the lens of friction and say, what are all of these feelings that our clients are experiencing? And how do we go through each point and remove the friction? And then also from the business processing side, how do we make it easier, right? How do we actually make it function better, faster, cheaper, and smarter? But how do we remove friction points? And when we're looking at it through both of those lenses, that's when your client experience and the actual user experience is so phenomenal, right? The first time you used Uber, I guarantee you texted 6 people and you're like, I took an Uber and I didn't get murdered and it was really great. And right, because you wanted to share that was really cool and different.
Yeah, no, I think that's an awesome example. And it also kind of makes you from a business perspective, you look at it, you go, okay, so Uber basically took all of the negatives of a taxi and then just said, we'll just create a better, more convenient, frictionless version of it. It's just, it's a great idea. It works out well. In fact, as you're saying, I'm like, it's amazing to me that taxis even still exist. But there's those 2 people at every conference that go because it's there.
Just keeping them in business.
It's what they've always
done.
Yeah. Okay, so this makes me think. So you brought up when you said this earlier, it really struck a chord. The whole when you onboard, or well, let's say this: when you get a new client there's always the idea was always thrown out there, told to you or mentioned to you that, hey, you have a new client, ask for a referral, right? You're there with you. They've agreed to work with you. They must like you and believe in you. You should tell them you're taking on new clients. Ask for a referral. I remember this one advisor was like, yeah, I do it right after my second meeting, and you should do it then. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I bet it works for some people, but like I remember thinking like, yeah, but like, don't I need to do something for them first? Like, don't I need to, like you said, provide value? Like maybe a year from now, they'll be like, oh, right, Brendan is really great, or the team is really great. Right. But I always had, and again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't ask, right? I don't think there's just a blanket statement, but I think a lot of people feel that same way. They go, I don't know if this is the right time. Now, on the flip side, so that I know it's like, yeah, you should ask then, but it never felt great. But on the flip side, as far as why to do it, I took and I've alluded to this on here a few times before. I took a course, signed up for a course. I guess it's been a few years ago now. It was about $10,000, right? So big, significant investment, worth every penny in hindsight. And to your point, like I signed up, and once part of me is excited. I'm like, all right, this is cool. I'm going to start getting this blueprint. I'm going to learn a lot. But the other part of me is like, wow, that was a lot of money. Did I just waste $10,000? I'm in this place of like, was this a good decision or not? And in that moment, all you need, all you really want is just some sort of validation, right? That
yes,
you made a good decision. Like you need something to tell you like, hey, that was money well spent. The farther out the outcome that you're looking for, the more painful it's going to be. So you're looking for these little like markers of progress, these little markers of validation. I think about buying a car, for example, big purchase, right?
Yes.
It'd be easy to have buyer's remorse. Some people do, but for the most part, you don't experience it very much with the car because right after you buy it, you're in it and you get to experience it. And you're like, you get the new car smell and you're getting to like drive it around and like, be like, look here, look at my new car. So you're getting the validation with when you're delivering financial planning, you don't necessarily get that same immediate validation. This course was the same way. It's like, hey, it was like, hey, follow these modules, do this training, and you'll eventually get the outcome. But I still remember getting in the mail, so not even an email, right? And this is also an online course, but getting in the mail this packet, and a packet and a book. So they gifted me a book and they gave me a packet, and I wish I would have pulled it out. In fact, I may look for it here in a minute. But on the very first page, the whole page was dedicated to, hey, you just made a great decision. Most people like you would never invest their time to get better. You are different. You made this great decision. Here's what you can expect. Here's what you need to do right now.
Yep.
You're on the right path. And to this day, I still remember the feeling that I got when I read that. And I still remember immediately, like 2 days later, going in and drafting up a template email that I started sending out to all of my clients from that point moving forward that essentially validated the same thing. And I say all of that to kind of highlight what you said through a personal experience, but also because it was in that, I hadn't thought about this till you just said this. I was more fired up and passionate about telling other people about this course at the very beginning that I was at any other point, right? Like it was equally beneficial today as it was then. And I probably haven't mentioned it in over a year, but when I first started and I was like all in on it, I probably told like 10 or 15 different people about it. And so there's something to be said for, you don't want to ask for referrals right out of the gate, right? You don't want to do that. Like, it's like, but that's the best time to capitalize on them and get them. So how do we do that?
Well, and that's the beautiful part of this whole thing is like, you never even have to ask, like it just starts happening because you start delivering these little experiences. And the thing that's beautiful and that I loved about writing the book is, you know, making sure when I was writing the book that I was doing it through the lens of like the solo advisor with no support staff. That's like, I don't have a huge budget. I don't have a huge capacity. All the way up to like, okay, we've got plenty of time, resources, money, whatever. And there's really not a big difference between the cashless solo, right? And the rolling in the money. Like it's all these like simple things. And I always joke because I originally went to school for engineering physics for like literally rocket science. And I'll say this, like, and I almost get imposter syndrome when I was doing the book and when I was doing the course and when I talk about it, cause it's like, this is not rocket science. It's so simple, but it's the simplicity that makes it so easy to implement and so tactical. And it's not really hard. It's just a matter of somebody kind of holding up the mirror to you and going through your process with you and saying, okay, there's a friction point. So really it's just like, here's a bunch of friction points that exist in this onboarding process that's pretty universal to all advisors. And here's some ways to alleviate or to reduce that friction for your clients and for your team.
Okay, so before we dive into and unpack sort of how to create the world's greatest onboarding process where they can't help but refer you every single person that they know, how do you think through the purpose of the onboarding experience? And maybe we've already covered a lot of it, but I'm just wondering, like, in your mind, if we're sitting here going, hey, what's the purpose of this? What do we need to be thinking about as we create an onboarding process?
Yeah. So anytime I build a process for advisors, or for myself, it's what is the client feeling? Like, we always start with the feelings. Like, what is the client feeling at this point? What are they feeling coming into this process? So whether it's a process for when a client loses a spouse, whether it's a process for moving money, whether it's a process for onboarding, I want to think about what is the client feeling when they're coming in, and what do we want them to be feeling when this process is complete? And then how do we build a process that's like this invisible bridge that moves them from what they're coming in with to how we want them to feel? So when it comes to onboarding, right, like I mentioned before, like, they're excited to work with you. So excitement's not the problem. There's still trepidation. There's still fear. There's still a little concern. There's still that second guessing that occurs. Like, did we make the right call? How hard is this going to be? And I like to look at it kind of like dating. So I'm almost 43. I'll be 43 next week. And I have been back in the dating pool, for a couple of years. So, I'm in a relationship now, but it was not that long ago that I was doing the dating thing again.
And you're like, what are these apps that they're using? Why? Anyway.
Brendan, we could do a whole podcast on the absolute disaster that is dating in your 40s. I've got stories.
That's the next one.
That's
2
right.
years from now, we'll come back and that'll be the topic.
That's right. And so when you're dating, right, like, you're excited, you're like, okay, this could be something, but you're looking for like all these little red flags. Like, you're looking for these little moments of friction where you're like, oh, wait, what's that? And so I think of this onboarding as sort of, and kind of what I call onboarding. So for most advisors, we're doing some sort of prospect to client process. And usually, like I said, that's a discovery, gathering of data. You're doing the thing. And then they eventually at some point say, I'd love to be a long-term client. So imagine if you're dating somebody and you're going on dates all the time and you're texting and you're touching base and you're talking about their feelings and their first memories of money. And like, you're having it. So like, this prospect to client process is a lot like dating, right? We're having deep conversations. We're seeing them with a lot of frequency. There's emails, there's uploading of documents, there's questions, there's touching base. And then when a client says yes, and they become a long-term client, I kind of think of that like getting married. Now, for most advisors, we have a good client service model that's, a revenue per hour base, like, it's appropriate. We're not overseeing, we're not overserving, we're not underserving. So imagine if you have a client that you've been seeing weekly, a couple times a month, having all these conversations, and they say yes to you. And then you're like, great, we'll see you again in a year for your annual review, right? It feels a little bit like, hey, well, now that we're married, I only take you out on our anniversary. Right. And like, there's nothing worse than.
We're no marriage experts. I would imagine, maybe we are, but I can't imagine that would work very well.
No, that would go over like a lead balloon for most people. Yeah. And we don't want to be that advisor that people are like, oh my gosh, it was so great. We had all this, they were so great. They were so attentive. Oh, and once they got our money, then they only called us once a year, even though that was the plan all along. They just didn't know that, right? Or they didn't expect that because it did feel so high touch in the beginning. So this first 100 days is from the moment that the client says yes to you long term. We want to slowly ease them into this client service model so they don't feel like they just fell off a cliff. And now you're only going to take them out on their anniversary or every 6 months, maybe a birthday and an anniversary, right? We want them to feel like, okay, that's the next natural progression, but we don't want to go from like hot to cold, right? We want to slowly dip them into the client service model and set the proper expectations. And then it'll be smooth sailing from there. So this first 100 days is a really important window to not only surprise and delight and really wow your clients, but it's also structurally there to slowly ease them into the long-term relationship.
Okay. So for most, in your experience, I would imagine that most advisors listening are thinking to themselves, or maybe they're in one of two camps. They either have an onboarding process or they don't. And I think I'm just sitting here wondering, like, how do I, first of all, know if I have an onboarding process? I know that sounds like a pretty elementary question, but like,
no.
How would you let me know? How can I find out if I have an onboarding process? And then the follow-up to that would be, how do I truly evaluate if I have a good onboarding process? Because I don't think we really, like, to your point, this is one of the processes that probably gets overlooked, right? And so, like, there could be some people that are saying, hey, well, I have an onboarding process. Like, I feel like we do a pretty good job.
So we fill out the paperwork, we get the money here. That is it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there's 3 layers to, in my opinion, there's 3 layers to every process.
Well, when you've written the book, it's called Your Expert Opinion, just so you know.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
In my author published opinion.
Okay, there you go. Right.
There's 3 layers. So the first layer is what a good process, a good advisor has a documented first layer, which is the paperwork layer. And this is the SOPs, right? That you can automate, you can delegate, you could do them yourself, doesn't matter. But yes, we have a process for moving the money. We have a process for setting up an account. We have a process for getting them into our CRM. Maybe it's documented, maybe it's not. So the thing with all these 8 processes that I referenced was you're doing them, whether you're doing them intentionally or not, totally different thing. So when I look at this paperwork layer, I always ask people to kind of rate themselves when it comes to a process on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being like, it's not documented. It lives in my head. It lives in my assistant's head. We're kind of winging it every time, but we generally know what to do.
Yeah.
Then like a 3 would be, okay, we have it written down. We have like the process is documented. We maybe have a couple of SOPs, a couple of email templates. Like we're doing it pretty much the same way every time. And then I would say a 5 is we've got it documented. We have SOPs, we have templates, we have workflows, we have automations built in, and it's super experiential for our clients. Like we've looked at it through that lens, like that's a 5. So we have this kind of, this idea that like you want to move from a 1 to a 5, but you might be starting at a 3. And it's really hard to go from a 1 to a 5, like in one foul swoop. That's a lot of process change for most people.
Yeah.
So my goal is always, can we go from a 1 to a 3?
I would say it's probably hard for a lot of people to go
5.
from a 1 to a 3.
Right.
Even, right. Like even that takes a lot of time, effort, attention, intentionality.
Yeah. Like I always tell people, we do a 10-month group coaching program. I'm like, if we can get you from a 1 to a 3 at the end of 10 months with some of your processes, like I have beyond done my job. Then you can always come back and refine it and reiterate it and make it a 4, and then come back and refine it as your capacity grows, as your technology usage grows. You can always level it up, but it's really just about starting somewhere and slowly moving up. So you have this paperwork layer, and this is like a good advisor, a good process has the paperwork layer documented. The second layer for any process is the expectations layer, where we are properly laying expectations for the client, expectations for ourselves, and expectations for our team. So a great process has this expectations layer. Now, a remarkable process, a phenomenal process, an exceptional process has what I call the remarkable layer. And this is that layer of, does the process intentionally develop human-to-human connection? Are we connecting with our clients above and beyond paperwork, a business setting? Like, are we surprising and delighting? Are we using this process to deepen the relationship? Yes or no? So those would be kind of what I would define as the 3 layers that make an exceptional process.
Is there a similar 1 to 5 type scale for me to figure out how well I'm doing the human to human connection part of the process?
Yeah, it's a little bit tougher. So like when we're documenting an SOP or a workflow, you literally want to think through. I mean, it's like a whole thing. I don't know how long we're recording today. If you've got 6 hours, we'll dig into it.
Yeah.
But it really starts with knowing like, who is your ideal client avatar? Like, who are you trying to build this process for?
Yeah.
Because we need to know who it's for and then use that to inform the process. And
can you give an example of why that would be the case? Like, what's a scenario where you're like, okay, for this avatar, it would inform this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you an example. I was working with this amazing advisor in Canada, and she was doing this big, huge, holistic financial plan for all of her clients. And she was like, but really what I want to be known for and what I love doing and what our clients really genuinely are interested in is the retirement income distribution part. And she's like, so here's where I'm getting stuck. We're doing these big, expensive estate plans and insurance plans and tax strategy and all of this stuff. And she's like, I'm getting really bogged down. It's taking me too long. It's taking us a whole year and a half to get through it all and to deliver the plan. And by the time we do, it's kind of diluted. And I said, okay, well, who is your ICA and her ideal client avatar? And we started drilling into who are they? What are the qualitative attributes? What are the quantitative attributes? What do they actually want? What are the problems you're trying to solve for them? And what are the solutions that you have? And while all of that financial planning stuff was really, really important, we eventually said, okay, for your prospect to client process, let's strip away everything except the income distribution and tax part. And she ended up keeping the pricing exactly the same. We developed a wash, rinse, repeat process that her team could do the vast majority of the work. So clients would come to her, they would go boom, 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 boom. They'd create the retirement income distribution plan. Then the client would onboard and say yes to you. And then we had a strategy. We're like, okay, in year 1, we're going to do these other financial planning topics. In year 2, we're going to cover these financial planning topics. And she was like, this was amazing because we were so much faster. We were more nimble. We got to the point quicker. We answered the questions that they had. And all of this other information didn't dilute the retirement income distribution recommendations that we were making for these clients. We were trying to come in and help them with the problem that they had. And here we're telling about all these other problems that they didn't even know that they had. And now they're just overwhelmed and their eyes are glazing over. And so really knowing who it is that you're building a process for. And then, right, you want your email language to talk specifically to those individuals, right? We don't want it to feel sterile or generic. So if you're working with 80-year-old widows and that's your target market, we probably don't want to have a super high-tech process.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We want to have
the friction is pretty evident in that scenario. You're just inviting friction in that example.
Correct. Yeah. And so who are you working with? What really matters to them? What kind of language are they using? What are the idioms? What are they familiar with? And building your processes specifically towards your ideal client avatar. And instead of having this generic process that then we're pushing our ideal clients through.
Would, in this example of you're focusing on retirement income and distribution, or maybe you have an 80-year-old widow, there's even ways that would influence or inform the onboarding process. I guess what you're saying. It's not just, it's all parts of the process are informed by this. But even onboarding would look different based on different niches, target markets, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some core commonalities that all of them have. That's why I like onboarding as for the book, for the course as a keynote, because it's one of the processes that's the most uniform. So in our group coaching program, there are some processes where I'm like, okay, everybody can follow the same thing. It is kind of here's a process in a box and then take what you want, make it your own. But there are some processes that it's some advisors have a 7-step process. Some have a 2-step process. Some, charge for their service, some don't. It gets really varied in other processes, but onboarding is one that's the first 100 days can be structured pretty much the same for everybody, but it does need to be targeted towards your ideal client. Or you're going to have the most success with the human to human connection component when it is.
What would it look like to have an onboarding process that's not catered to my ideal client? I guess, what would it look like to be done wrong? So I'm just trying to get an idea in my mind of I like the idea of catering it to them,
Mhm.
But is there a good example? Can you think of one where it's like, all right, this would be an example of how you have your onboarding process and it may be good, but it may not be good for this situation?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example from my own practice. We worked with a lot of C-suite executives. So we're talking very, very, very busy men and women. If our onboarding process, if the expectation was that they come into the office and do everything in person,
okay,
right?
Yep.
Versus and so we're talking like 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic, especially, we were using Zoom like crazy. We were embracing all of these technologies because they couldn't get off work early and they couldn't leave in the middle of the day and it wasn't convenient for them. So when we would be doing, one spouse is at their office, another spouse is at their office, and we're meeting over lunch, the executives in the offices next to them are like, oh, you have an advisor that meets you virtually over your lunchtime? Like, that's incredible, right? So even little stuff like just thinking through the lens of like what works for them. Right. And if you are working with 80-year-old widows, ladies, they're probably not going to love Zoom. They're going to want to come into the office to do some of these onboarding parts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, that's great. I like that. Okay. So if we start thinking through how to build, if we're sitting there going, okay, I want to build this remarkable onboarding process. Clearly, it cannot be done in one podcast conversation. That's why there is a book and a course.
But I can break it down into 3 categories and I can give you a couple examples from each one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay. So I take that first 100 days and I break it down into 3 chunks. So 1/3, right? And the first third is all about professionalism. So we want to show up as super professional. We've done this a million times. This is concierge level. Like, we've thought through all of this buyer's remorse, the chemical reactions, the things that you're questioning, the things that you're wondering, and all of the points that you're going to potentially bump into in the first 30 days with transfers and all of the yucky stuff. The second window, we call the surprise and delight window. This is where we want to make sure our clients don't feel like, oh, once they got the money, so we want to go to the extra measure to make sure that they're set up to work functionally with us, that they know exactly what to expect, how we're going to operate, that there's no misalignment of expectations at all. And then the third window we call shock and awe. And this is where we're going to like go hard on that human to human connection piece. We're going to go way above and beyond what their expectations are. So I'll give you an example from the first window. So that first window of being professionalism. So there's 2 things I like to talk about here that I think are really important, and they're kind of silly. And it's funny because I talk about process a lot. And most of the time I'm like, let's make it faster. Let's make it cheaper. Let's make it more efficient. Onboarding is the one where everyone's like, wait, what? You want me to do more during this window? And I do. It's the one time I want you to actually do more because the ROI on it is huge. If we have longer lifetime customers, if we have higher value lifetime customers, if we get more referrals, the investment in this onboarding window is so worth it. So the first one.
I have a quick question, by the way. And I was sitting here going, am I going to ask it? Am I not going to ask it? Because I'm putting you on the spot. And if you don't know, that's
always
totally okay. If you're like, Brendan, that's a pretty that's out there. Of course, I don't know the answer to that. That's totally fine. But did you ever track? Also, I know you like tracking things. So that's also why I figured I'd ask you. Did you ever track the amount or percentage of referrals that came in the first 100 days versus like later on in the relationship?
Not initially, and I wish I would have had data from like before. So, I'm a big believer that you make strategic, business decisions based on data, but we didn't have that kind of data. It was something, honestly, like in our practice, we just started noticing and we were just like, wait a minute. And then I started intentionally researching it and reading more and doing more. And then we were like, kind of like a holy crap moment. So for me, I didn't have the before data. We did have the after data, but advisors that I work with now, I'm like, okay, let's track, go back to your last, 20 prospects that became clients. How many of them received a referral or gave you a referral in the first 100 days, the first year, the first 18 months? Because most people are at a minimum tracking referrals in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Then we did, okay, well, let's do your onboarding process. And in a couple years, let's see what does that look like now? And so actually, when you and I were speaking at that conference in Tempe, Arizona, I had a guy come up to me at the hotel and he's like, Libby, we've been doing your onboarding thing now for 2 years. And I have to be honest, at the beginning, I thought it was like really fluffy. I mean, it was fun. It was nice. It felt good. Like we knew our clients loved it. And we could see how it felt very concierge. We could see how it felt very hands-on. He was, holy crap, we've gotten so many referrals in the first 100 days. And he's like, I'm not saying I thought you were full of crap, but like, I was not expecting it to be like this.
Don't you love it when people come up to you that go through your stuff, your courses, or whatever, and they'll come up and be like, Libby, wow, you were right. You weren't full of it. And you're like, right. That's why I'm telling you this. Like, I know that it works. Like, Libby, you'll never believe this. It worked.
It did. Well, I'd be honest, there were a few times that I remember doing financial plans for clients and then like 10 years later, them going to retire. And I'm like, oh my God, it worked.
Yeah.
Like, oh, everything we said would come true did. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So, this is a good example though of, so maybe we don't have hard data for a variety of reasons, but it's also a good time to point out that just because you don't have data doesn't mean it's not true. Like the fact that you guys were noticing something was probably informative. You've got anecdotal evidence at this point from your coaching program. I was just curious if there was actually like hard numbers to it, but that's not even that important. So anyways, you were telling us about some examples of what to do in that first window.
Yeah. So in this first 100 days, this is where, like, again, I'm saying add some stuff, right? Like, and it sounds kind of crazy. So when I started back in the day, my business, we had these things called printers, and we would like print off paper for people to sign. Do you remember these things? I mean, they're wild.
I've got one sitting next to me right now, actually, and I use it on a regular basis.
I use mine at least once a week. I really do. And I'm really proud of that. Yeah. Because I'm so old school. So we had printers, and I remember we used to print off all of these papers. Like a client would, onboarding can be kind of chaotic. So we'd have all these consolidating IRAs and Roths and applications for insurances, like all this stuff was happening. And we'd print off this humongous stack of paper. We'd put all those little sticky tabs and highlights and mail it off with a great cover letter. And no matter what, clients would miss a signature, forget to date something. We'd miss it. We'd send it in, our corporate office would kick it back. We'd have to send it back to the clients, like friction. It slowed down. I was going to say,
this is an example of friction. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So to solve that, we were like, okay, what if we have them come in the office and do this? And we'll kind of make it a signing party or a paperwork party. And that way there were no mistakes. And we found in doing that, this is a great opportunity for us to connect with our clients. Like our clients appreciated us going through each one saying, here's what this is. Here's what you can expect from as far as next steps for this part of the process. And we gave them it was a great opportunity to just chat and connect, right? Again, so we're thinking about what does it look like to slowly drop these clients into a service model. It was a connection point. So then came DocuSign, and we're like, sweet, this is going to be so much more efficient. We're going to just like zap off all these forms to our clients. They're just going to sign them and send them back. And while that was true, we also noticed that there was still friction involved in that process. So I just personally went from an S Corp an LLC to an S Corp LLC, and I had to onboard with a payroll services. And I did the same thing, right? So thinking through the lens from the client side, they sent me 4 million DocuSigns. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down on Saturday morning, and I'm actually going to take the time to like go through these and make sure that I understand them. And in the meantime, I'm getting emails from them saying, hey, where's your DocuSign? Second request. Where's your DocuSign? Third request. You haven't signed this yet. And I'm like, wait, just hold on. And I felt so guilty, and I felt like all this shame. And I'm like, wait a minute. And so then Saturday came, and I was like, I emailed him like, I'm going to do it on Saturday. I'm traveling. There's a lot going on. I just want to sit down and look at it. So it came Saturday morning. I had a ton of questions, and I couldn't get them answered because it was a Saturday. So I had to send them this big giant email with all the questions. They emailed me back on Monday, answered about 75% of the questions. Then I had to wait so it became this like friction process. And we noticed that with our clients too. We'd send them a document and they'd say, oh, well, the fee schedule on here looks different than what we talked about. Or like, what is this one? While some would sign it and just send it back. And it took them a long time because we were working with busy executives. So we found by having even in the digital world, having a paperwork party or a signing party with them was an opportunity for us to set time on their calendar and our calendar. So we would let's say on Monday, they said, yep, we want to do all the things. we'd schedule, and by we, I mean, I wasn't even part of this process. So here's where the scale comes in.
Right.
My director of operations would host a paperwork party with them on Thursday. And so she would send them all of the DocuSigns. They'd get on Zoom. She'd say, open your email. Let me walk you through each one of these, explain what it is. Again, not just because we didn't think they were capable, but it forced them to put time on their calendar. So we reduced the friction of them feeling like it was a to-do item that was hanging over their head and kind of an annoyance versus something that they were excited about.
Right.
We could send a pre-paperwork email that was just like, we're so excited to meet with you. This thing you're talking about, here's all the cool stuff that's coming. We're going to do this paperwork party. It's an opportunity for us to walk you through everything, something that nobody has done for them before. Like that's the whole purpose here.
Yeah.
And in that, we would set the expectations like, okay, we're going to call Fidelity and do this 401k rollover. They're going to mail the check to you, but we're going to send you an envelope as soon as you get the check, pop it in there with the letter of instruction that's already in there, drop it at UPS here. So we would just spend that time with them to make sure they got it all done, that it was all done correctly. If there was an error in something, Lori could fix it right then and there. It just reduced all of the friction. And we had 100% compliance on signing all of the paperwork within a few days by doing it this way. It's those little things.
Yeah. And like, there's also this part of me that hears it and goes, and you're not sitting around waiting for weeks and weeks for somebody to sign and return the paperwork, right? Yes. You're not sitting there going, okay, are they ever going to sign this, fill it out and send it back in?
Yeah. Cause then you have to do that thing that the payroll company was doing to me, like, hey, and then
the email blast follow up where it's like, hey, did you see this? Hey, are you going to sign it? Don't forget. Yeah. Sorry to bother you, but
right.
And we talk about on the flip side, a not great experience right out of the gate, right? Like, even though you have good intentions, you're like, I just joined, I'm onboarding, I just signed, I'm handing over my life savings and paying a lot of money for you to help manage my finances. And now I feel like you're pestering me with emails, right? And it's kind of like, is that really the experience you want to create right out of the gate?
And then it gives you opportunity to make mistakes. So same thing when I was onboarding with the payroll services company, and then they only answered 75% of my questions. I was like, okay, well, here's their attention to detail. Like if I wasn't under the gun, my onboarding with them was so bad. And it was while I'm writing this book. So it was like, if I was not under the gun with them with a tax season ending, like I had to file retroactively, like I would have totally jumped ship. It was so terrible. And it was like the perfect example. In fact, I have to do a podcast episode on it, like as the book is coming out, because there were so many things in there that I'm like, this is not rocket science. Like, why are you making this harder than it needs to be? There was so much friction. So same thing, this paperwork party is like a little thing, but it's also another touch point that is a very different experience. We're making sure they have all their questions answered. And we would be really clear, like our goal is that you're not sitting down on a Saturday morning trying to do this in your spare time and then getting stuck. Like we want to make sure we're there, we're available. We know you're capable of signing DocuSigns, but we want to go through it with you just to make sure you understand everything that we're doing so that we didn't make a mistake and we can make sure you understand what to expect next.
And when you explain it like that, like nobody really says no, right? They're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. We'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah. And all of this is in the setup, right? It's all in that script. And that's where like the course is like, here's scripts that you use. And here's a pre-paperwork party email of what to expect and getting them excited and how to infuse personality for your ICA into those appointments. So that was one of them. The other one kind of in that first 30 days was I can very dramatically remember clients sending me an email going, hey, I moved like $1.7 million. Where is it? What's going on? And it was one of those things where we're like, well, we told him we were waiting and that it takes a while. Right. And I realized like, have you ever ordered pizza from Domino's and you get the Domino's pizza tracker? Yeah, and the kids are like sitting there. I mean, we would order pizza and my kids would be like, Ramon's put the pizza in the oven. Okay, it's now, they would like follow each step. And I remember being like, okay, we need to have some sort of way of letting our clients know where they're at in the process, especially when there are a boatload of moving parts. Like we would do these big comprehensive plans and we'd be doing like 10, 12 things at once. And, silly me expecting our clients to like hang to every word that we said and remember everything. So we started sending a weekly email on Tuesdays that would just be like, here's everything that's been completed. Here's what's still pending. Here's where we're at on those. Here's what we need from you, if anything, and here's what you can expect next. And it was just this, you're going to get this email every Tuesday, letting you know exactly where we are in the process. And I liked that. So you don't have to have like a fancy pizza tracker. Ours was just like an Excel document that we kept. And then we just put it into this email every week. But it forced my team to be on top of everything because we had to send this to the client every Tuesday, right? So the byproduct was that we were hyper organized on onboarding and following up on stuff and making sure we could report back to the client exactly where things were.
And if you are already hyper organized, like I know there's probably a number of people out there who are like, yeah, we already do that. We do that as a team. We track and make sure that we're on top of where everything's at. And we're really good at it. We're on top of it. We could answer right away. It's like, okay, well, if you're already doing that, then you're probably more than halfway there. Now just take that and communicate it to the clients. Because I know if we're being honest and realistic, like it's not crazy to think that oftentimes you get an email from somebody that just started and they're wondering like, hey, like you said, hey, where is that 1.7 million? By the way, it can be weird to see 1.7 million one day and not the next. But like, even like, hey, you said, or where is this? When is this happening? When is that? And it's easy to get annoyed and kind of be like, I'll let you know when it's ready. I'll let you know when we're there, but that's not good enough. Right. And so
no, it's like, and this is kind of a really random example. And like, you feel free to edit this out if you will, but like for females, when you go to the gynecologist and you get your annual exam, they're like, we'll let you know if it's a positive result. And you're like, that's not enough. I need you to tell me if it's negative. So I'm not sitting there thinking, is it lost in the mail? What if they forgot to tell me and I'm over here dying? Like, so there's something about like knowing either way.
Yep.
And what we found for products too. So in my practice, we did do insurance. And so what we found for products that had a longer timeline that included underwriting. So something like long-term care that could potentially take like 3, 4, 6 months, that by sending them, we didn't do it weekly at that point, but we would send them this pizza tracker every 2 weeks. It kind of reminded them that this was still happening. Cause I can remember calling a client and being like, great news, you got approved. And they're like, for what? And you're like, oh, long-term care. And they're like, well, why do we need that again? And then it was friction, right? They had to come back in. We had to re-explain what it is, resell the product, like re-figure out why, like, and they lost interest by doing the pizza tracker. It kind of kept it front of mind for them that, hey, there's still this thing that's going on. They're still on top of it, even though, and we would just include, this is a really long process. It takes a long time. You can expect this to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And just by getting that weekly email, it kind of kept it front and center. And we did find then that when things were approved, it was like, oh, great. Yay, finally. Versus, wait, what?
Yes. Here's the other thing that and you probably have thought about this, but as I'm listening to you explain it, that comes to mind as being extremely, extremely, probably subtly valuable and helpful. And that is, you're letting them know right out of the gate that you're signaling to them that we're on top of things. We're tracking these things. And what it does for most clients who like, really, they just want to know that they can like sleep at night and they can rest because you have it handled and they don't have to use any mental capacity to make sure things are in order, being done the way they're supposed to. Like there's I used to call it the pillow factor. Like there's no greater benefit than the pillow factor, where you can lay your head down at night and you don't worry about anything because you know that it's taken care of. You're right. Like right out of the gate, you're signaling to them with this pizza tracker, like, we are on it. We will take care of it. We are on it. And you're sort of training's not the right word, but conditioning them for the relationship to know like, hey, Libby and their team, we can rest easily because we know that they're on top of it. Yeah.
And it's so silly because it's not hard. Like I said, it's not rocket science. It's just letting people know where they're at every week. And we'd set the expectation in the signing party that this is going to be chaotic. Like you're going to get prospectuses and emails and forms, and your previous advisor is going to maybe reach out. And we had a process for breaking up with your previous advisor because we knew that was a part of the friction in the process that could slow everything down. And, we'd say it's going to be really chaotic. And that way, if it wasn't, okay, we looked amazing because we're like, we made this look really easy. If it was chaotic and stuff did go sideways,
at least
they knew it was coming, right? And we'd say, we're going to do our best, but we can't control companies kicking back stuff and changing their process on us. Like, we're going to do our absolute best, but we know it can be really chaotic. And I loved it when people got through and they're like, oh, that wasn't nearly as bad as we thought it would be. And I'd go, well, good. That means we did our job right.
What about going into the second window, if you want to call it that?
Yeah. So if I had to pick like one thing in the second window, we did this thing that again, I'm not like a creative. So we just called it our formal onboarding meeting. And again, like it all came out of this idea of like, how do we just make this easy for our ideal client avatars? Like, how do we make this simple for them? How do we make sure that we have everything that we need so that in the future, if they call us, we don't have to say no. And so this was a collection of things that just had happened over the years. A client calling and they're at the car dealership and they're like, I found the perfect car. Can you wire me $25,000? You're like, oh my God, we have the wrong account on file. We can't wire you anything. We need to send you this form. You have to sign it and send it back. And guess what? You can't get your car today. And it's like, right. Anything that happened.
Friction.
Yeah. So we would do this thing called the formal onboarding meeting. And again, it was done virtually. My director of operations did it. I wasn't even involved. And we would, instead of giving them this big list of, okay, make sure you create your login to the portal and download the app and follow us on social media and go into your portal and create nicknames for your accounts and make sure the correct checking account is uploaded. And Lori would just sit down with them and go through all of it and say, okay, great. We're going to go ahead right now and we're going to create your login to the portal. And then I'm going to give you a tour of the portal. I'm going to show you where to find stuff. I'm going to show you how to access your investments or your insurance or your tax statements. And while we're in here, let's go ahead and set up e-delivery for anything you'd like to come via email versus paper mail. And let's go ahead and create the nicknames for all of your accounts while we're in there. And so she would just do all of it for them essentially, or create this container for which they could get all of this to-do items done. Okay, great. While you're in, if it was in office, she'd literally be like, hand me your phone. I'm going to go ahead and follow us on all your social media. Do you want to sign up for our weekly blog? Like, making sure do we have the accountant form signed? Do we have the CPA form? Do we have the right authorizations? Who else can we talk to? Are they on file? Did we get your beneficiaries right? Is it the right checking account? So we had this just laundry list of things that Lori could just go through and go boom, 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 and knock them all out versus 2 months later, finding out we don't have all the authorizations on file. They didn't send us the thing back, or that's not the checking account they wanted linked to their money market. And so it was just this. And again, it was another touch point in this first 100 days to drop them into our service model. But again, it took time. It only took maybe 15, 20 minutes, but it was something nobody had ever done for them before. So our clients would get done and be like, wow, no one's ever given us a portal tour. Oh, I'm glad we got all of that crap off my to-do list. Because I can remember with our broker dealer, we had this special member ID number. And even though we'd email it to clients and we'd give it to them, no one could ever find it when it was time to set up their portal. And so they'd go to do it on a Saturday and they didn't have their member ID. So then we'd email it to them on Monday, and then they'd have to find time. Right. Again, these like little friction points. So by just doing it for them and setting that time aside on the calendar to knock it all out and to show them that we were really committed to making sure that they were functionally set up to work with us, that they understood how to find stuff, that they knew how to access their funds. Because there's nothing worse. A client never sets up their portal until the market starts to tank. And then they're like, oh my God, I need to get in and see what's happening. And it's like a crisis situation, or they're kind of under the gun. And then your office is closed, or you're not available that day, or whatever. It was making sure that everything was set up.
20 people all reach out at the same time because they didn't set their portal up and now they want it.
Right.
As I'm thinking through this logistically, how much time tends to elapse between a signing party and then the formal onboarding meeting?
Roughly about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the business that you're doing. So if it's a bunch of ACATs and super quick stuff, it might happen a little bit quicker. If there was a lot of like annuity, transfers or stuff that might take a while, it could take a little bit longer, but we wanted it to occur somewhere between 30 and 60 days. And often the client would have a portal set up because we would have done some uploading of documents or something along those lines. But we let them know we're going to have this formal meeting. We're going to show you around. We're going to make sure everything's set up. And we're going to use this opportunity to set expectations. And we would go through, literally, we have a document that we called the expectations of our engagement, where we would roll through, here's how you communicate with us. Here's how frequently we're going to meet. Here's who does what on our team. Here's what you can expect between meetings. Here's what we would set the stage. Like, we expect that you come in for a meeting at a minimum of once per year. Like, as much as we all love clients who are like, I don't need a meeting, we required that of people. Yeah. Right. And so like, whatever your expectations are, this is a great time to get in alignment and make sure I always say that expectations are the death of gratitude. I love that saying, because if a client is expecting one thing and you're delivering down here, or they're trying to get a hold of you on your cell phone and you're like, that's not how this works. We have a team email address, or here's what constitutes as an emergency. So in my practice, I only worked 3 days a week, but my team only worked 4. Our office was completely closed on Fridays. So we wanted to make sure we communicated that with our clients. And here's what you can expect on a Friday. And here's what to do if there's an emergency. And here's what's actually an emergency, right? And just laying out all of the ways that we're going to work with them and how they're going to get the most out of the experience in the relationship, and make sure that we're on the same page from the beginning.
Yeah, I think you used an example. It may have been one of your podcast episodes, or I can't remember where it was, but I think your example is you had a client who they reached out, or they called or emailed, and then when you talked to them, they said, like, it just feels like you're not getting back to me quick enough, or like it's taking a while to get back to me. And it was sort of like, yes, by design, right? Like, but I didn't probably communicate that well enough to you to know that, hey, here are the expectations for a return of communication. It's going to be within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever.
Yeah. Or they would expect that they were going to hear back from me that same day. And it's like, well, that's not how this works. And we would just be really clear and say, here's Libby's role in this business. Here's Lori's role. Here's Lisa's role. Here's Amy's role. If you call in, there's a very strong chance that you're not going to talk to Libby, that she doesn't half the time. I don't know how to take money out of your account. I don't know how to do 90% of the things that you're going to ask. That's Lori's role. And so making sure that they understood that, like, when we're with you as a client, we're giving you our undivided attention, and we do the same thing for all of our clients. So there's a very small chance that when you call in, you're actually going to speak with me. So here's what that's going to look like. And just being really clear. Obviously, we want to do it through using language that's like, here's why that's good for the client, right? Because we're doing the same thing for you, right? So we're going to ask that you leave as much detail when you call and ask a question, and somebody will call you back with the answer. It's most likely going to be Lori. If it's something that they need me for, they'll say, you know what, Libby's not available until really late today. So I'm going to grab her between meetings and ask her that question, and then I'll give you a call back, right? So it's building confidence in the competency of your team as well.
The other thing I like about the expectations document that I've seen done really well is it's not just here's what you can expect from us. I mean, it's here's what you should expect from us, but it's also here's what we expect from you. So that's also clear. And they can, like, they sign it and they go, okay, this is my commitment that I'm making, right? So it could be like, here's when we send you something, we expect you to respond or sign it within this time. And there's varying degrees of this, right? Like, you could take it to the extreme, but even as much as like, we're going to meet once a year, like that's more or less a requirement, right? So it's expectations alignment on both sides.
Yeah. I'll give you an example from my business. So when we would be doing a full financial plan update, we would send them a document 2 months prior to the meeting that we needed back 1 month prior to the meeting. If we did not have that document back, or the information that we needed back 1 month prior to the meeting, we would cancel their meeting and reschedule. And the reason being is that my team, I only worked 3 days a week. So for me, like, my team needed 2 weeks time to research, do whatever, put stuff into Money Guide Pro. And then I needed 2 weeks to review it, make adjustments, and craft recommendations. And so if we didn't get it until the last minute, the recommendations weren't going to be really good. So we would train our clients from the beginning, saying it's not a mean thing. We just want to make sure we're not doing a hack job for you at the last minute. So we need these documents a month in advance. And we had like perfect adherence to that. There were a couple times where, like, hey, we're going to have to move the appointment back. It's not a big deal, but we need that. And those clients never did it again.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. Nice. I've always thought that, and you probably can't do this. I shouldn't even say it. But as the idea just popped back into my head as you were saying that, I always wanted to say, like, hey, here's when we need the document by, and for every day prior to that you get it to us, we will take 1 or 0.01% off of your fee, right? 1 basis point per day prior to when it was done, just to see, like, as an experiment, like how many people would then get it in as like earlier or but like before the deadline.
Yeah, I would always say you can have it good, you can have it fast, or you can have it cheap, but you can only pick 2. So if you're going to send it to us and we only have a hot minute to turn around, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which is true, right? You're just telling them the truth. Yeah. Quick question personally for you on this. You're talking about how you did the signing party, the formal onboarding meeting, and it was who was it that did it, Lori?
My director of operations. Yeah. So the interesting part about onboarding is that once a client said yes, I stepped out of the process.
But you probably also communicated that to them, right? Like it wasn't like a shock. But here's my question. is if it would have just been, or for somebody that's like, hey, I'm solo and I have an assistant, if you were in their shoes, would you do these meetings yourself? Would you recommend doing them yourself? In your coaching programs with the people that are in that position, how do you tell them to think through that? If they're like, man, I like this, and that might be a lot of meetings. Is it worth it? Should they do it themselves? How do you think?
Yeah, I mean, everything, right? Everything. So like today we're talking about all the table stakes. So there would be other parts of the process that I'd say, that's not as important. I would cut that before I would cut these table stakes.
Okay.
Like these are the things that made such a difference. And to that solo advisor, spending an extra 40 minutes doing these meetings total versus missing documents, messing around later with things that you didn't get on file, plus not having to market. Like one of the most beautiful things for me, the last 5-6 years of my business, our marketing budget was $0 because we were just getting referrals. So we put 0 time, 0 energy, 0 effort, 0 resources into marketing. So the ROI is still there. It's still worth it.
So, so you can look at it as this is a business development use activity. I mean, not literally, but in a way, like you should, it should pay back in that way. But also, like, I think you pointed out something that was kind of key here, which is it may take a little bit of time on the front end, but you're avoiding a lot of time and headache and friction by doing it now and avoiding it later, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing like is going to the gym, 3 times a week forever versus waiting until you're way overweight and out of shape and you're like, okay, and that's a bigger lift, right? It's harder to come back from. It's more effort, it's more work, it's more complicated. And versus like, and we all say that, right? Like, oh, I wish I would have done this years ago. I kind of think of it sort of like, when you remodel a house right before you sell it and you're like, we're going to, you spend the $100,000 blowing up the kitchen and you're like, oh man, I should have done that 6 years ago and I could have actually enjoyed this and had, an easier time cooking in a more functional kitchen and all of these things for all those years and actually really enjoyed the fruits of that labor. Same thing with the onboarding. It like putting that effort and time in up front is you reap the benefits, you reap deeper relationships, you reap, less boo-boos, errors, mistakes, things you have to say no to or come back to in the future. Plus the clients are just yours forever, right? They're like, this is so unique. This is so different. Like we've never had anybody walk us through these things before. This feels like a good relationship. And you obviously have to back that up with a good ongoing client service model. You can't drop the ball from here, but man, it's a lot easier to have an exceptional first 100 days and make mistakes later versus to make a bunch of mistakes in the first 100 days and have to like recover from that.
Yeah. The downstream effects of doing it well or not well are massive. Probably hard to even truly grasp. Okay. Shall we go to, I'm not sure why I said shall. I'm not really sure
You're
where
so
that came
fancy.
from.
We shall, Brendan, we shall.
Let's start. Let me back up. What do you think about going to the third window?
Perfect. So the third window is, again, it's another touch point in the process. And again, like I said, we're only touching on table stakes. There's all these other like little things that we should and could be doing during this first 100 days. But at some point in this last window, we want to do something that makes our clients feel seen, heard, known. We want to do something a little extra that makes them be like, wow. So there's kind of two things. There's a businessy thing, and then there's like a personal touchy-feely thing. So the businessy thing that I love is in this window when they're getting their first investment statement, or maybe they're getting their insurance policies. Again, somebody on your team, doesn't have to be you, just doing a quick, hey, I just want to walk you through your first investment statement with us. I just want to make sure you know how to read it. Like ours at the company I was with, I had an engineering degree and I could barely read our statements. Like the front page was like all these negatives where we were moving money, and it basically looked like, hey, we gave you our life savings and you lost all of it. And it was like super crazy. On all the following pages, there are all these like transactions and ins and outs. And so we found it to be really helpful just to say like, hey, we want to go through and do a first investment statement review with you and show you how just what you're looking at. And make sure that like when you open it, you're not like, what in the heck? This looks crazy. Again, we had clients have that moment where they were like, oh my gosh, they lost all their money. Something like, what is going on? There's all these negatives. What does this mean? And we realized that was a friction point for people. So just saying, hey, don't open it. We're going to do this call. Let us know when you get it. We're going to do a call and we're going to walk you through it because it does look a little crazy. And people were like, okay, great. Or we would get people who are like, yeah, I did open it before and I was pissed. And now that you've explained it to me, okay, this makes a lot more sense.
As I think about that, I'm thinking through, like, okay, how do you maximize impact and efficiency? One way you could do that at scale anyways, is to send out a video.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yes.
do you lose some of the benefits of the human to human connection by doing it that way?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. So like we have a lot of advisors in our group program that do that, right? We're like, okay, where can I scale if you're a solo advisor? If you have people on your team, again, there's something about the touch point. It's the It's the dating, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one more thing. And we'd have clients say, oh, no, it's fine. I don't need it. And maybe in that case, you could be like, okay, great. Well, I'm going to send you a video anyways. Or you could be like, no, I insist. I just want to make sure there's a couple things I want to point out to you. It'll only take a few minutes. Is it super necessary? No, but that's why it's in that like shock and awe category. The other thing, and we also like to do it too, to make sure like, we didn't make any mistakes. So when we would go through an insurance contract, we'd have them go through that page 3 and we'd say, okay, here's what you got. Here's the riders you accepted. Here's the term you did. Here's the riders you declined. And there were times that people were like, oh, I thought we had that. I thought we said yes to that. And we're like, oh, we did not think you said yes to that. Thank God we're still in that window where we can go back to the insurance company and get that fixed versus waiting until something really dramatic happened and then figuring out that there was a disconnect or something. The other thing I love, and the thing I love even more in this third window, is we had in our, we call it a client intel process, where from the very first time you connect with a prospect, you're gathering personal details about them, right? What they do for hobbies, where they went to school, what their kids are up to, where they go to church, what charities are involved in, all of those warm, fuzzy details.
Let me point this out real quick. So for anybody that hears that and they're like, I do want to know more about that. We talked about that a little bit more in depth in the first conversation that we had. So it's episode 92 for anybody that wants to go back and hear more about the client intel process. Cause I was fascinated by it and we dove into how you do it, what the sheet looks like and everything. So I'm glad you brought it up. And if anybody wants to know more, they can go back and listen to Libby 1.0.
That's right. Perfect. So, right, we're gathering these little details. So you have to have that process in place. But somewhere in that first 100 days, I don't like a gift when people sign paperwork because it feels like a present for doing business with me. And there's something very transactional about that versus doing something in this third window. So we're, a couple months past the point of a client signing paperwork. And and I love it. Instead of, I'm a big fan of every time I have a microphone, I will say this is my hill to die on, that giving clients a gift with your logo on it is not a gift. It is marketing.
Right.
And there's nothing else that you can call it that. Even if it's a cool gift, it's still marketing. And so I love for people to find something small if you want to do a gift, if you have the budget and the capacity, but something that's like, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, like something very specific to that person versus like, here's the generic gift basket we give everybody that becomes a client of Aspen Wealth or whatever. So something that makes people seen, heard. Like I personally loved stuff that clients would say, I don't even know how you knew that. Like, I don't even know, like, I don't remember talking about that. I don't know how you knew that. Those were the types of things that I loved. And if you don't have a budget for gifts, you can do simple things. So we would find out clients' wedding anniversaries, right? Super simple. Find out, are you a celebrator? Do you go out to fancy dinners? What's your favorite fancy restaurant? And there's something so simple about 6 months in advance of a client's wedding anniversary. Getting on Open Table takes like 3 seconds, booking a reservation for them on their anniversary at a good time, calling them 2 months prior and saying, hey, we took the liberty of scheduling an anniversary dinner for you at your favorite restaurant. So we got a reservation for you at Boca at 7 p.m. on June 13th. Look, you don't have to go. We just think it's really important. If you're anything like us, we totally drop the ball when it comes to anniversaries and we wait till all the reservations are gone. So we just took the liberty of doing this for you. If you have the budget and compliance limits to send a bottle of wine to the table, pay for the dinner, awesome, great. But you don't have to. People are tickled just to get the call that you thought about it, even if they cancel the reservation. So same thing for single clients, doing it for their birthday, for them and a couple of their friends. Like, it just needs to be a gesture that we heard you, we saw you, we value you, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to be this big, grand, over the top thing. It can be something really small as making a reservation on their behalf.
I mean, I would pay the financial advisor fee just to have somebody make reservations for me. Like, that sounds like a no-brainer to me. I'm like, oh, that's the more valuable part of this service, as often as I forget it.
Yes.
And also, it's like, to your point, you could offer to pay for dinner if you can, maybe you can't. But honestly, like, for me, I need more help remembering to schedule than I need help paying for the dinner. So that to me is actually more valuable. So for somebody that does send out like a standard gift basket of some sort, does that count as shock and awe? Like, would you say that? No, it's not. Okay. All right. So
I would not.
That's good.
It's nice,
but you can do better.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay. But I would not put that in the shock and awe category of getting the human side of money Yeti. While I would love it and I would use it, I wouldn't be like, wow, Brendan must have saw this and thought of me personally. He made this one-off Yeti mug just for me, right? Like, and that, like, so we want, like, so let's say in your planning process, a client is saying, you know, we have a big dream, like our big dream trip is Italy. We'd love to go to Italy and that's where my family is from and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just, hey, I was at Barnes and Noble. I saw this Rick Steves guide to Italy. We can't wait to help you get there. Right. It's a $12 book. It doesn't have to be an over the top, elaborate. It's just, we heard you, we saw you. And isn't that lovely?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you don't even have to explain it anymore. Like, well, you can all tell the difference in that. You can feel the difference in that. That makes sense. All right. Before we pivot into the rapid fire 3-pack, is there anything else that needs to be said that's left out that we need to talk through or mention? And I guess I'm going to actually, I'm going to ask you, but I'm also going to throw this one thing in there. You've mentioned before the using some sort of a like service calendar or letting them know, hey, here's when we're going to do what. When would that be utilized?
So I love that in that formal onboarding meeting. Again, laying out, here's what you can expect from us year in, year out.
Okay. So back to the original question that I just hijacked. Anything else that if you're like, all right, there's one other thing we need to make sure we get out there?
The big thing for me is just, you know, while everyone listening is like, okay, so the problem is like most advisors, this is true of all advisors that come through like our program. It's not like clients are leaving in droves because you're not doing these things. So there is no pressure to go from 0 to 100 or 1 to 5, right? So just start small. Like you don't have to say, okay, I'm revamping. I mean, you certainly can revamp the whole thing. And that's what the course is for. Like it's got all the templates and tools and everything that you need, but like just start small, just do one thing differently, master that first, then add something else and master that. So it literally could just be the paperwork party. Get your pre-party email, your post-party email, your agenda and script for the meeting down, master it, perfect it, and then add something else. So it doesn't have to be this big over the top like overhaul. It can literally just be the addition of one small thing. It could be a thank you card, a handwritten thank you card. I mean, it just has to be one small thing in that onboarding to make the experience just that 1% better.
One more challenge and action item that I'm going to throw on top of that too is for anybody that takes these ideas and does it or changes their first 100 days. I want to just challenge somebody or multiple people to also start tracking their results. And if you do that and you track them, send them to me or send them to Libby because we would love to see those actual numbers. So somebody take the liberty to do that. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, we'll shock and awe them with some kind of awesome gift of some sort for.
Ooh, I love that.
All right, rapid fire 3-pack if you're ready.
Yes.
Okay. You've answered these 2 of them before.
Okay.
So first one is if you could gift any book to everybody that's listening, what would it be? And yes, I've already gifted them your book.
Okay. So I probably said this last time too, because it's my favorite obscure little business book. I'm holding it up here. It's called Built to Sell by John Warlow.
Yes.
You can see it has tabbies and highlights and circles and all the things in it. It is the most obscure business book. It's built, and this is really like one of my book's not written like a novel like this one. It's written like a fiction novel. So it reads like a story. So it's really different for a business book, but it is all about creating a business that can thrive without you. It is one of the best books on like simplifying process that for a service business. And it's just a genius little book. It's written in a way that you can literally sit down and knock it out in 2 hours. So that's what I wanted my book to be, like similar, like you can read it. It's not a lot of fluff. It's literally, here's the lesson, here's the answer, and done. And it is just the most obscure little book, but I love, love, love it.
I do think that's the one that you mentioned last time, but I also love the fact that it has stayed the course of the last 2 years, that it's still like, I think that says something, you know, as opposed to like, here's a new book or a different book. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact that it's been like, it's like your, well, in a way, like kind of like your Bible, a business Bible, we'll call it.
Yeah. I come back to it all the time. I still suggest it to people. It's one of those books that it's so easy, and people will tell me like, I read it and holy smokes, you're right. Like that completely changed the way that I'm thinking about X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. Okay, who is the best listener in your life? And then what does that person do so well makes them such a great listener?
Okay, so this is like the most probably cliche answer. Okay, well, first of all, it's definitely not my teenage children. They do not even make the top 35 of the list when it comes to listening skills at all. Working really hard at that, but man, that's a tough one. But I would say it's my therapist. And I have gleaned a lot of insight from the way that she listens. And it's so interesting. Like the difference between a therapist or a girlfriend or my mom is she never cuts me off, right? She's always waiting and letting me pause and process. So something I've appreciated about her is I am a processor. Like I need time and space to process through something. So I love when she asks me a question and I answer her, and she doesn't immediately jump in with a follow-up question just yet. She gives that and holds that space and lets me process it for a second. And then there's usually something else that flows out after the pause that is usually profound for me, impactful, or something I didn't realize about myself previously. And so for me, like I love therapy. I'm a huge proponent of it. I will probably always have a therapist. I have never experienced so much growth by her. And literally it's just a lot of it is just her not saying a word.
Right.
And just
That's
giving me that space.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'll probably always have a therapist, A, because I think it benefits me, but B, because I get to observe and watch and like take notes on these like communication skills and listening skills to make somebody feel heard and understood. I mean, the other day I think I sat in there for like 15 seconds. Well, it felt like 30 seconds to me. It probably wasn't that long. And I in my mind, I'm supposed to be like coming up with my answer, but I was literally thinking, man, she's doing such a good job right now of not talking and filling this space. I wonder how long she's going to let me go just sitting here. And I mean, sure enough, I had like a full, what felt like 30 seconds. And then oftentimes after that break, after like the pause or the silence is where the best answers and responses tend to come from. It's just really, really hard to sit in that. Right?
It really is. Yeah. It really is. And so I have found for me, like her modeling that, I've done that so much more with my bad listening teenage boys, that I pause and just let them feel that, like let them process for a second and fill the air. And it is amazing what comes out of their mouth next.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. What dating app do you... No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Last question.
None of the above. None of the above.
Oh, okay. You get the opportunity to hang a poster in the office of everybody that's listening around the world. Spread a message. What would it say?
Yeah. And I can't remember if you asked me this last time, but I have had the same like mantra for myself since I started my financial planning practice. So I started my financial planning practice in 2004, and I went to my first like big top 50 of the company conference the very next year. And so I had a very quick start in the business. And I remember being like surrounded by these, there was a cocktail hour for the top 10 performers in our organization and all of the first timers for this conference level. And we were all at this cocktail hour together. And I remember looking around and listening to them talking and feeling like, so like, how did I get here? That must've been a fluke. What in the world am I doing with these guys? And I remember hearing them talk and I'm like, oh my gosh, they have access. Like they use the same company sponsored laptop. So this is like how old this is at the time, right? They have the exact same CRM. They have the exact same planning software as me. They literally, there's nothing different about these guys and what they have access to other than their experience. And I remember I went home and I made this little poster and it just says, why not me and why not now? And that has just continued to be like a little North Star for me that has kept me going like, well, why not me? And there is no reason to wait. There is no reason to delay. I don't need more experience, or I don't need a bigger office. I don't need staff. I can do all of that stuff and I can go get those things right now. Like there is no prescribed, like you have to do this, then this, then, and why not me? Like I deserve to be here and I deserve to be amongst these people and I'm completely capable of all of it. And so that would be the thing that I would share with all advisors is why not you and why not now? Like there is no better time than right now and you are perfectly worthy of all of it.
And most recently, out of that phrase, a book was born. Why not me to write a book? And why don't I just do it right now?
That's right. That's right.
Well, Libby, once again, awesome as always. No shock there. For anybody that's listening they're not aware, they don't know you, they want to know more, or they want to know more about the book and the course, where can they go? What should they do?
Yeah. So first of all, the podcast is The Efficient Advisor. And, we were on that same list, right? For the Kids' Best podcast for financial advisors. So It was good company on that list.
Yeah.
You can also check me out on LinkedIn at Libby Greiwe. I do lots of content, expounding on the podcast there. And then of course, theefficientadvisor.com.
And now some YouTube videos.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yes, we started dabbling in the YouTube pool, and that's been a whole thing.
Yeah, no,
but why not me? Why not now, right?
That's
me
right,
and Mr. Beast, we're going to be on that same level here real soon.
That's right. Well, and we'll link to all these things in the show notes for anybody to be able, so they can go out and access them. Libby, keep doing awesome work, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of the guest. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. The commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by the guest or RFG Advisory or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change anytime without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. The guest and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.